All right, so welcome to another video on the Corvette. So today's topic that I was kind of on the fence about talking about. I don't know, faux pas or how much transparency I really want to have with this car, but uh, going into the costs and how much money this uh, hobby of mine has taken in the last little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through purchase price of the car in the year that I did it, and then things that I've added to the car or done to the car either by my own mistakes or by necessity. So I'm not counting gas, oil changes, and stuff of that nature. I'm just going with the actual parts that I've had to put on the car to replace or to add or whatever it might be. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm not going through any of these numbers to flaunt or to say, look at me and here's how much money I've put in a car or whatever else. Um, this is really just to go through and help inform someone who's a future buyer, whether it's a Corvette platform or a different platform, different car, that these are some of the expenses that you'll probably start encountering, especially if you have an older car like a 2007. That stuff is going to need replacing, stuff is going to need upgrading for being able to be on the track. This is just to help you be aware of how much it's going to cost to get a mildly prepped HPDE car. So I ended up buying this car in Dallas, Texas. When I was living in New Orleans, I flew from New Orleans to Dallas with a one-way ticket, with the hope and plan to buy the C6. It was advertised higher than it was. Found a couple things that it needed, and so forth and so forth. So I knew it was going to need tires in the next little bit. They're showing a little bit of dry rot, and the shifter was just pretty much trashed. So that and a couple other items, we knocked down the price, and we settled at $20,000 for the C6 behind me. So at that time with COVID, it was a pretty fair price. I would love for it to be lower, but it was before all the used car prices and performance car side of things just absolutely skyrocketed. So I consider that a fair value. So that was in 2020. And in 2020, I also had to do, or didn't have to, I chose to do a couple other items. So I put new tires on it, just factory size tires. So it's currently on behind me. These are Falcon FK 510s. They're a 300 tread wear tire. They're not great, but they're not terrible. So, anyways, did that factory sizes and was able to drive the car comfortably. Then I added a new head unit with a backup camera. So if you've never sat in a car and tried to like look how close you are backing into a spot, you can't see a dang thing. So I decided to put a backup camera in when I was upgrading the factory radio. So not a big deal, but went ahead and put that in. And then also I'd mentioned the shifter was pretty bad. So put in an MGW shifter as well. So there's two different MGW shifters that you can do for the Corvette. One's a flat stick and one's just the regular one. It literally is just, it's a billet piece of aluminum as the actual shift handle versus just a traditional circular, smaller shift handle. It's aesthetic, it's not performance, but I did put the shifter in. So recapping 2020, costs of what I did for the car: $20,000 to purchase the car. Then I had $400 for the shifter and other things that went with that install. Radio and backup camera was around 400. Again, maybe a little bit more with some additional clips or harnesses or whatever it might have been. And then tires I ended up doing for about $1,200. I knew that I was going to get into HPDE and driving on the road course, and I wanted to get a tire that was not as grippy and not as performance oriented, because I didn't want to mask bad habits just by the tire being a better tire. So, right or wrong, that's a decision that I took. Okay, so that brings me for the total for 2020, which was just the purchase of the car, didn't really do anything else. And then in 2021, when I had a little bit of downtime, when I was still with Amazon, that's when I went ahead and did the shifter, the camera, radio, and put the new tires on. So for 2020, that total year was $20,000 I put on the car to buy it. Then for 2021, I spent $2,000 on tires, shifter, and radio and camera. So my running total right now is $2,200 I've put on the car, which that amount I was well aware of, and that's what kind of was expecting. That's why I negotiated some of the purchase price down. Getting into 2022, this was the first year that I was going to actually start taking the car on track. I made a commitment to actually enjoy the car and use the car as I wanted to, not just have it sit here in the garage and do nothing. So, booked my first track day event. Car was in good working order. It had fresh oil and fluids, trans and diff. So good to go. Let's go ahead and get to the track. When I was at the track, my first day, I had some pretty aggressive brake fade. So pads smeared, brake fluid boiled, and a lot of smearing and ruining of my factory rotors. So that was cost of tuition. So for 2022, pretty much what I did was I bought new rotors, and I bought those for $400 from K&S Brakes. So there's a TBA 4300 series rotors for front and rear. My Z51 package means I do have a little bit different, but it's fine. And I bought some new replacement brake pads. So I brought Carbotech XP10s for the front and XP8s for the rear. I did get them mix matched just because brake balance and wanting to not overcome these not very grippy tires. Now that I have better tires for the track day setup, I can definitely get a better pad, but I don't have the skill to really take advantage of it yet. So did that. And as I started getting the car in the air and getting ready to look at how bad things were and rebleed all the brakes, that's when I noticed just how bad my my front ball joints were, as well as my outer tie rods. So outer tie rods I replaced with the Bear bump steer kit. That was $210. My rotors were $400. Brake pads for front and rear, that was $360, and had another around $280 for doing the ball joints in the front of the car. I didn't do them in the rear at that time. So that's pretty much all I did. I did put Motul RBF 600 in the car for my second event in 2022. But again, brake fluid does go bad. It does absorb water, especially in the environment that I'm in, with it getting it as hot as it is. So I'm not counting the probably $150 worth of brake fluid in the costs. I'm taking that one just as using the car. So that takes my total in 2022 to $1,250. So again, 2020 purchase of the car, $20,000, $2,000 in 2021, and then $1,250 in 2022. So all in, not that expensive of a year. 2023, however, that's kind of when things kind of started getting up there a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump into 2023. I'm gonna run through what the items are, and then I'll come back and hit the prices in total at the end. So now that I've been on the track a couple times, started to find where things are not doing what I expect them to do, or now I'm noticing the age and the time and wear on these items. Now I've really started to understand what I actually need to start looking at and changing to have a better performing and more reliable and better handling car on track. So that being said, this is also kind of where I really started this YouTube channel at the beginning of 2023. So I had Bilstein shocks. So I replaced front and rears, my existing ones. I didn't notice how bad they were until I actually started driving with them on track. So replaced those. Also ended up doing sway bar end links. So got those from After Dark Speed, and also had Track Spec Motorsports Delrin bushings, so Teflon impregnated Delrin bushings for upper and lower control arms, front and back. I did have one hub that was starting to go bad, even with the not aggressive tires, but Anyways, so if one hub was already on starting to go bad, had a little bit of play, the other three were on borrowed time. So I went ahead and upgraded all four of my hubs to the SKF tracker, or the heavy duty SKF X tracker hubs. So cool. Now we're there. Brakes, stock brake lines, kind of spongy, kind of squishy with the factory rubber lines, and now I'm putting a lot more heat and a lot more pressure through them with the better brakes. I went to Stop Tech braided stainless lines, and now if I'm on track, if I go off track and need to be pulled out, kind of makes sense to have tow hooks on the car. So I got LG tow hooks for the front and rear of the car and put those on. I think I actually got those on in 2022, or I bought them in 2022, but didn't really install them until 23. Anyways, so now going into some of the other items. So I did Sparco seat, Sparco Evo L seat. I got the AMT ultra low seat mount bracket with sub belt included, and the harness bar, and the black anodizing on it. Bray Krause harness bar for the C6. I got an OMP 6-point harness, which we'll be seeing, or you saw in the last video as well. And then I also decided that I wanted to have better tires and not have to worry about track tires versus street tires, and if I use them all up at the track and not having really enough for daytime driving or whatever else. So now I have two separate pairs. So those are the Apex SM10s and bronze, or burnt bronze, and I have tires on them. So I have the Nankang CRS 315 30 18 tire. So again, 315s on all four corners of the Corvette. So to go with the new wheels, I ended up needing to get new lug nuts to go with those wheels, not for an aesthetic, but it does look better with the black lug nuts instead of the chrome plated ones. But it was really because my existing lug nuts, which was a 19 mil hex socket that would go on it, that was extremely close, even at slow speed with a ratchet, to making contact with the wheel. So got new lug nuts from Apex for my car. And yeah, well, with the new tires, with the new wheels, now I kind of like being able to monitor what pressure the tires are at, so I can see if I'm driving either on track or on the street with the other wheels. If I end up starting to see pressures go down, I probably picked up a nail or debeaded, or well, I'd feel a debead, but I'd end up noticing if I've got a slow leak better. So I bought TPMS sensors for the new wheels, and I now will pair those wheels to the car if I'm going to the track, or if I'm just driving around the street. I'll put these factory tires back on and repair those TPMS sensors to the car. So continuing on, then I had AMT lockout kit. So for the Corvettes, there are many people that have had varying results with the factory eccentric bolts. So to change the alignment, it's an eccentric bolt to be able to set your alignment. I had that slip on me at the track. So instead of just driving straight, it then I was going straight, but the wheel was twisted. The steering wheel was twisted. So not wanting to have that happen again, I put AMT camber lockout kit on. So rounding out the items that I had for 2023 was my head and neck restraint system. So I got a Stand 21 system, and then the accompanying helmet anchors for that. I'm not counting my helmet in the cost because helmet is used in other places as well, but the harness that's in the car, it needs the head and neck restraint, the tethers, and the anchors. So a lot of things happened in 2023. So now I'll kind of go down the line item price for each of those items, and then we'll go ahead and total up the final amount. So Bilstein, Bilstein shocks, those are $300 for the whole car. After Dark Speed heavy duty end links, that was $300. Delrin bushings for the whole car, that was $1,150 for the whole car. Replacing all 4 hubs with ARP wheel studs, that was $1,700. Stop Tech brake lines was $100. LG front and rear tow hooks, that was $380. My Sparco seat, that was $900. The seat mounting bracket was $500. The harness bar, $1,020. Man, it keeps going. The OMP harness was roughly $430. The new TPMS sensors for the car, that was roughly $275. The wheels were $2,000. Lug nuts were $40 for all of them. Tires, again, 315 by 30 by 18. Those are $2,000. AMT lockout kit, that was $350. My Stand 21 head and neck restraints, that was $420. And then the anchor posts for the helmet, that was $60. So grand total for 2023 was $11,925. And that takes me to the total that I've put in this silly car, and I'm positive that I'm omitting things, whether it's the mounting and balancing of tires and this, that, and the other. I'm positive this number is actually higher. But with those parts that I just ran through for 2021, 22, and 23, and the purchase of the car in 2020, my total cost or total amount invested in this car is $35,000, $35,175. So that's me doing all the labor for working on the car, installing all the parts except for mounting and balancing tires. Yeah. So when people say just spend a little bit extra and get the car that already has these things, there's a heck of a lot of truth into that. If I bought a mildly prepped or HPDE car, C6 Corvette, probably could have gotten one for $35,000. The car would be done. I wouldn't have to go through all of this install progress and researching what parts I want to need and have and this, that, and the other. Honestly, I probably could have gotten into a C6 Z06 for $35,000. But I do enjoy the work. I enjoy tinkering with stuff. I enjoy seeing the incremental progress. I like finding those new barriers of what my own skill levels are or what the parts limits are. So, yeah, that's full transparency on the Corvette with how much money it's actually taken to get to where it is today. And it looks externally, it looks the exact same. Externally, it's not much lower. Yep. There's another probably $200 in 2023 that I forgot, my VMP lowering bolts. So that, let's just call it $35,500 to have the car as it sits. It does give me an extra set of wheels, and it does give me the ability to confidently and safely go out and drive on the track. So anyways, so that's a summary on the car. When I was tiling these numbers up, it's definitely a lot more expensive than I thought it was. My wife guessed $35,000. I thought it was like maybe $28,000. That was it, including the purchase. But yeah, once you add $4,000 for wheels and tires and another $1,700 after install and everything else, mount and balance, $6,000 on just hubs, wheels, and tires. That number gets large pretty quickly. I hope everyone's enjoyed this video. I definitely did not expect the numbers to be what they were. but it's fun, it's enjoyable, and I've got a track day coming up in a couple weeks. So thanks for clicking in. If you would, please give a comment, please subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you next week.